Welcome to this week's episode of Business Unzipped, where I am joined by Conservative Party politician Sir Peter Bottomley, who's been in Parliament since 1975 and currently represents Worthing West.
Hello Peter, how are you?
I'm very happy to be able to stand again for election. It makes me... I enjoy campaigning. You can meet people. Some come and say nice things about things that my caring team or I have done. Others have shared battle. And when I was in Angmering, outside the cafe, a woman came up and said 42 years ago she'd been outside a political office when there's a competition to guess the weight of the baby. That was our third child. And apparently she'd been successful.
Great. So you've actually been in politics for a very long time.
I've been in Parliament for a long time. Whether or not I'm in politics, other people can judge. I think I'm in public and political service. I think the reason to go on doing it is I can do good, I can have fun, and there are many battles I fail at, but they're important battles to try.
And why do you still do it?
If you forgive a bit of MLM, me lovely me, I'm good at it. Because I've been around some time, I know how to do most things. And one of the lessons I've learned is that occasionally you have to work cross-party to achieve things which otherwise wouldn't happen. So to touch on a slightly tricky subject for some people, women in Northern Ireland couldn't get legal abortions. They had to travel to Great Britain, often at great expense, often great difficulty. And with Stella Creasy, a Labour MP, we found a gap in the legislative programme and we forced it through. With Dame Diana Johnson, who's been chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, I've been working with her on the infected blood scandal for years, feels like a decade. And eventually we've got the Brown Langstaff report, and compensation is going to be going to the people whose lives were turned completely upside down by people doing things they should not have done with contaminated blood. And for those who are looking at the football pages, it was because I worked with Labour MPs that we got the Hillsborough inquiry. We discovered all that went wrong with the policing, a game being played in a stadium which shouldn't have been used. Why it takes decades to get these things put right, I don't know, but sometimes it's worth having an MP who has been around for decades and has known what it is to campaign and persevere, and eventually you can get more justice for more people. Summer politics is great fun. I was once in the House Commons football team. I usually played right back, but the other two captains, the Labour and the Liberals, said I should play at left wing. That's their idea of a political footballing joke. We were playing at Old Trafford, and Bobby Charlton was playing with us as a centre-half. He saw me, he said, "Pete, the ball's coming your way." I took it forward. He said, rather disappointed, "Pete, can I have it back, please?"
I like that because actually there is a misconception that it is, one party versus the other. So it's quite nice to hear that actually you do come together and work together for the greater good.
If I can tell a story which I don't think anyone might, not really a confidence. A few days before the coronation, the King came to the Palace of Westminster because most MPs couldn't go to the coronation. I didn't. I went to the Queen's funeral, but not to coronation. Anyway, I was standing, because I'm Father of the House, with Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, and with Rishi Sunak, the Conservative leader and Prime Minister. And while we were waiting, I said to Rishi, we need to have the law changed on residential leasehold. There's too many abuses going on. And although it may be a very long bill, it's not politically controversial. And I said to Keir, will you please confirm that to Rishi? He said, yes, I will. And the last bill that was put into the programme was changing the law on residential leasehold. And the last bill to get through Parliament and become an Act of Parliament on the final Friday before the general election was that. We managed to get it out. On the Wednesday it looks as though we wouldn't. On the Thursday we did. On the Friday it was done. I came back from giving a speech down here on the south coast and welcomed the passing of the bill. It was a near miracle, but it was a miracle that was needed. And for that, to have the Labour Party cooperating, the government willing to use the cooperation for the benefit of the ordinary people. There aren't that many abuses in this constituency, but in some others there are horrendous stories. People have been put through hell, especially after the Grenfell Tower tragedy, where besides the loss of life, people discovered the only people to have to pay for putting fire defects right were the leaseholders who don't even own a brick in the building.
Yeah.
Now, those sort of things get me passionate. And my own future, I'll take it. If it goes well, fine. If it doesn't, that's life. But to fight for the people who have nobody else to fight for them except a hard-working, perceptive MP who's willing to cross the floor and bring other people across to me to say, let's do this together. It's for the public good.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you are father of the house. What does that mean in real terms?
Well, I don't recommend it's a career ambition for anyone. No. There's no pay, there's no merit, and there's no responsibility, except for presiding over the election of a speaker. When you have a new speaker or a new parliament, the lady usher of the Black Rod comes marching down from the House of Lords, knocks on the door, we shut in her face. She then commands us to come and attend up in the House of Lords, and we're told to elect a reputable speaker. And in my time, we have. Sir Lindsay Hoyle has been a good speaker, and I hope he's re-elected. And I hope I'm there But beyond that, the advantage of being father of the house, or mother of the house, or in American term, dean, the person with the longest continuous service, is you can get called after the two party leaders. So after the Prime Minister, after the Leader of the Opposition, it would normally come to me if I want to take part. And when that happens, ministers are still there, so they hear what I say on behalf of local people. And so the press. And often people say, I'm glad you spoke the way you did, because they either read it or they watched it before the debate got too boring. When I was first a Member of Parliament, and this will apply to a number of people after this election, because a number of people are standing down voluntarily and some maybe involuntarily, is you get called about 4 hours in, and by that time no one's listening, and the media have long gone away to go out to a good party.
Yeah.
So I think my position is of advantage to those I try to serve.
Yeah. And how long have you been representing? It's Worthing West, isn't it?
Yeah. In 1997, they changed the boundaries. Where I'd been serving in what was originally Woolwich West, that constituency got changed significantly. Down in Worthing, there used to be a Shoreham constituency which went coast to coast around Worthing. So Terence Higgins, who had been a brilliant MP for Worthing itself, retired. And the new constituency had 2/3 of Worthing, and it had Ferring, East Preston and Kingston and Rustington. This time we're losing Rustington sadly, but we're gaining Angling and Findon, which is good fun. And in that election, in those days, Worthing Town was Liberal controlled, West Sussex was Liberal controlled, with the help of the Labour voters. But soon we got Conservatives to take responsibility for each of them. And since 1997, I've been the MP here with Tim Lawton having the other part of Worthing and Shoreham. He's now retiring. I hope to go on.
And what have you done in that time for Worthing West?
I failed to solve the problems with the A27. I apologise for that. You have to find a solution which is acceptable to local residents, but does not go through the South Downs, because to try to go along Long Furlong would be environmentally unacceptable, especially now it's a national park. It wouldn't solve the traffic problem, and the cost can't be justified.
Yeah.
We can't go on having people queuing up for hours to get past the Grove Lodge roundabout.
Yes.
And if anything goes wrong, people are stuck forever, and that's bad.
Yeah.
I failed to solve the problems of level crossings, where the Highway Authority and Network Rail haven't been bothered over the last 40 years to say, once every 10 years, let's do an up and under or something to solve the problems. Because you watch ambulances and pedestrians and cyclists and buses waiting, as well as cars and commercial traffic. Those are the downsides. If you take the upsides, when we last had a Labour government, I hope listeners will forgive me sort of mentioning party politics, they wanted to knock out every other hospital. So if you kept St Richard's, you'd have to lose Worthing. If you kept Worthing, you'd have to lose St Richard's or Brighton. We fought that to a stop. We kept the essential services, and they put the hospitals together, and with the help of Dame Mary Ann Griffiths, we became outstanding. They transformed accident emergency. When things went wrong, they admitted it and put them right. They're an example to all kinds of public service. So the hospital service was good. On GP services, the great battle was to get the new Strand premises up near Durrington Station, and that took years because the NHS didn't know how to re-provide GP services. Amazing to say so. But the then chief executive thanked me afterwards and said I'd managed to show them how to do what needed to be done. And in a few months' time, we're going to be opening the integrated care service by the town hall in the centre of Worthing, which will allow GP services to be modern and good, and the other services around to be in premises where are co-located with a pharmacy, which will be good for the staff serving patients and good for patients themselves. Those are things which will last, the good will last forever. What I'm most pleased with is the way education in Worthing has been growing and getting better. There was a time when parents would come to me in tears saying, my child's been allocated to a school I don't think it's right. 20 years later, a pair of parents came to me almost in tears saying their child had not got into the school which before people had turned their backs on. And that's the miracle of a good head backed up by good governors and with education authority or an academic trust giving them support. And that has been really tremendous. And if I give an example of one of the transformations on the borderline between Worthing and Arran, what was the Chatsworth High School, I was confused with a school with a hotel, the Chatsworth High School, with its head, Pete Byrne, became the Oscar Romero School. I happen to have known St. Oscar Romero in 1978 when he was under threat of assassination. And that school has expanded. It's going to have a sixth form. And if you meet them on environmental projects, helping to save the Goring Gap, for example, seeing the quality of religious education. It's not indoctrination, but it's showing people what faiths are, not just the Catholic Christian faith, but others as well. It's the way a school can change. Mm. Then we had a problem of the Department of Education, for reasons that were almost lost to the mists of time, about to put an extra primary school into northwest Darrington when there's already a surplus of places, and it would have harmed every primary school on the west side of Worthing. It took 2 years, and eventually government gave way and agreed to what local heads wanted, and we're now going to get a school for people with special education needs instead, which is desperately needed.
Yes.
And that's campaigning with people with insight. And one of our former councillors, Russ Cochrane, got me involved in that, and I'm really grateful to him. He had family experience. I've learnt from his campaigning, and together with local heads, we're making a difference. School leadership matters, and college leadership matters perhaps more than having a good MP. They can transform lives forever. I can help solve problems during 5 years.
How do you actually go about solving those problems? What's the secret?
Be observant, be curious, ask questions, and cooperate, and stand up to bullies. So, for example, there's a person who claims he's a Labour supporter, I don't think he really is, who says he wants to develop the Southern Goring Gap. And he's been abusive to me, he's been rude, he's threatened to do all sorts of terrible things. I just say to him, no, do your worst, but I'm going to stand for local people who think the Goring Gap, north and south, should not be built on. And if you think I'm a pushover, you have to push a bit harder. People really, as a Member of Parliament, ought to be able to say, I am going to be a rock, and not a shifting sand. If I've sort of stuck my piles in the ground and the pillars are here, I may bend, but I won't break. And I'm doing that for other people. And if you think back to, and we've got the D-Day celebrations in June, people, our parents' or grandparents' generation, went across to France and they thought half of them would be dead within a week. If they can do that, we can do things which aren't really threatening. They may be uncomfortable, they may be embarrassing, but we ought to be made the same kind of fibre as our parents and grandparents.
Yeah. So the stuff that you've done so far with schools and the NHS is great. Sometimes it feels like there's more to do. So what have you got planned?
Well, there are three or four areas. One, of course, is commerce, business, employment. And I'm really proud that one of the people who stood against me 14 years ago, I think, as a Labour candidate, is now a friend of mine, Ian Ross. And one of the places where he does education and training and helps prepare people for employment is in Worthing. He works in other parts of the country as well, but watching what he and his colleagues do in taking people who haven't got confidence or haven't got a competence and getting them into the world of work where they can become taxpayers, which they want to be, is again a transformation. It's watching young people grow up, even if they might have one or two handicaps or difficulties to overcome. Then you meet people who've been in business, and I talk a lot, well actually I spend more time listening, to my local newsagent. And Malcolm is the person who each week puts me right on what's going on and what people are saying. That helps. And around Worthing and district, you've got people like Paul Holden, who runs the Worthing Journal, and he is a person who helps to keep the town together, both the tradition and the change. And he'll take us on a walk around Worthing Central District and say what's wrong, what the town should put right, what the borough needs to put right. That's tremendous. And if you go to some of the villages, whether it's Angmering and Findon or Clapham and Patching or Poling. Well, Poling's actually outside, but if you take the established areas, East Preston, Kingston, the like, they've all got people who come together. Today I've met the person who owns the Angmering Museum. He hasn't got a museum, but he's got the stuff for the museum. How can that develop in the same way that the Rustington Museum has developed? So in a way, it's continuity and change. You can't throw everything out, but you do need to realise that many things need to be developed, and it helps to have MPs who will do that. I'll give you an example that's on my mind at the moment, is if people on Bewley Road, Bewley Lane in Angmering, have got 3 fields to the west of them, where there's likely to be a planning application for over 200 houses. And whether that should be developed or not is one question. The access, if it goes along a quiet residential lane, where elderly people are not used to having hundreds of cars a day come through, how can you get West Sussex to say to the developers, if you get planning permission, you've got to find a way in and out of this new estate that does not harm local residents. Mm-hmm. You've got to take into account the needs of those who haven't got homes, as well as those who have. And that kind of balance, I hope I can offer advice and help and be an honest friend to all.
Yeah, housing's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because we need affordable housing, but we are limited on space, and we still want to protect the beautiful greenery that we have around us as well. So there is a balance there.
If we take the housing need, the idea that you build executive homes at £500,000 or more as a way of helping young children on below average salaries, that's an idea that's for the birds. And when Keir Starmer says he's going to put a bulldozer through local objections, I fear he may be right, because Arran District Council, alongside Worthing, but had said that some agricultural fields at Kingston Lane should not be developed. An opportunities developer put in an application, and there were 11 councillors there, 5 of whom voted no because it was against the plan, and 6 voted yes because they were told it would cost too much if they were unsuccessful in resisting an appeal. And those who voted in favour were a Green, a Liberal, and 2 Labour councillors. Now, if they're going to stand up for what's right for the environment, if they're going to stand up for what's right for local people, they shouldn't have been doing that. Now, they do their job the best way they can. I do the best way I can. I don't normally criticise people. I just point out that when people see the headlines, Sir Keir Starmer bulldozer to local objections, it has happened here already. That's a threat to everywhere else. And every golf course, every nursery, every farmland is under threat unless we can say, no, you have to preserve the green gaps, the green spaces between our villages or our town and the local hamlets. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We've also got the marine to protect as well, haven't we? We've got lots of sea life around here.
The marine life, a previous chief executive of Worthing Council asked for my help in getting the Crown interests to agree to the Sussex Bay project. If you can have kelp farming locally, that allows marine life to work. And my campaign, again with local councillors, to stop paired trawling by big boats pulling a great log along the seabed, disturbing everything for 5 years, that's been banned. And perhaps having the Rampion wind farm, again, helps stop some of that fishing. And if the marine life improves, you'll have so much more life in the sea to match the protection we've given to the South Downs with the National Park. So for those who are environmentally conscious, it's not only the Conservative Party, it's not only the Greens, but Labour and Liberals, I think, would want to cooperate in saying, let's have an environment which will be good for our children and grandchildren, as well as allowing the economy to develop somewhat. I'll give an example on housing. People who are quite mature, people of my sort of age probably, some of them would choose to live in modern homes which are easy to heat, where you don't need to have a car, where you're close to facilities. Those are not the homes out in the green fields. They're in the centre of villages, centre of towns, centre of cities, where you can live at a reasonable cost, affordable, and you can get all the services you need within walking distance. That should be developed, that should be made easier. And then more people will release family homes for our younger generation who are bringing up children. And then you get that sort of cycle of life which, don't take a still photograph society saying, here are people in trouble, here are the people who are all right, here are the rich, here are the poor. See the ups and downs of life as we go through life, times of dependency when we're young, independency, family formation, sometimes family deformation, reformation, then another period of independence, then needing care again, and try to take all that into account and make life fair. You can't make life equal, but you can try to make life fair.
Okay, that's good. So we've touched on housing and we've touched on the green agenda. What else are your ambitions?
Well, the most important issue is to consider what the purposes of politics are. I say it's to try to reduce avoidable disadvantage, distress and handicap, and then to improve well-being. So one of the worst things is unnecessary international war. How do you avoid that? And the answer is by international politics, if you can. How do you avoid high-level, persistent civil war, which can be even worse? And the worst war we've ever had in this country was the English Civil War. The worst in America was the American Civil War. You need to have some kind of flexible political system for that to work. Then you get on to how to make people better off, stability, prosperity. And that comes from a flexible economic system, not total free market, not total state control, but a sort of mixture of intervention, trying to allow things to change. Because things do change. Mm-hmm. If you take the lives, for a history lesson, 150 years ago, 2 out of 3 of us who worked for money outside the home were agricultural labourers in domestic service or the transport industry chasing around after horses. All those jobs have gone. If you take 70 years ago, 600,000 people were digging coal out of mines. Those jobs are rightly gone because the lung diseases everyone got, terrible. We had 300,000 people plugging in telephone exchanges so people could talk to each other. That's all electronic. And you had 250,000 people baking coal, like the gasworks in central Worthing, now going to become housing. That's gone. So the change is continually happening, or the advent of the computer. No one would now believe it, but 30 years ago there were 2 million people doing jobs which evaporated with no newspaper article, no strike, and that was when the typing pool went, because we started doing our own typing. So life is change, but the continuity should be the care for others, and I would argue encouraging self-reliance without selfishness. Unless each parent is trying to do as well as they can for their children and for themselves, life won't improve. But you don't want to do it with sharp elbows, pushing other people down. You want to say, let's all try to come up together, let's all try to do well together, and let's all try to be effectively kind to each other. Not just, I care for you, but I will give you a helping hand.
Yeah, so be part of the community as well as taking care of your family.
When you see the summer festival in East Preston or in Angmering or in Worthing, when you see people at the Darrington Community Fair, when you see people at the Scouts or the Sea Scouts or the Brownies or the youth drama groups or the dances, it just makes you realise how much we do with each other. Mm-hmm. And I knocked on the door of somebody today in Heen. I said, what do you do? He said, I'm retired in banking, but I do the Worthing Food Bank, and my wife's involved in a pregnancy advice system, trust, charity. That's all people sharing and caring.
Yeah, and that's why you're still doing what you're doing today.
Well, if I can encourage them and help them, yes. If they can encourage me and help me, even better.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining me today, Peter. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gemma.